DoggieDiamondsTV.com. What it is, people? It's your boy Doggie Diamonds. You already know what I do. I'm here with somebody who does a lot for the community. We right here in Brooklyn. Attorney in Brooklyn. Let them know your name.
Kenneth Montgomery. Kenneth Jamal Montgomery.
And what do you do for a living? What's your profession?
I'm a trained litigator.
Okay.
Trial attorney, I should say, because there's a difference between litigator and trial attorney. When I graduated law school, I began as an assistant district attorney in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. I served there maybe 4.5, 5 years. I resigned. I did a small bit of commercial litigation, and then I set up my practice, which was at the time 100% criminal defense,
okay,
federal and state. And I taught at Fordham Law School trial advocacy, second and third year law students. My practice turned into, over the years, civil rights, civil litigation, young men and women being beaten and killed by New York City police. So that became a big part of my practice. I did tons of transactional work in the entertainment field, negotiating people's deals and stuff of that nature. But I realized, in the entertainment area, everybody's friend. My skill set wasn't appreciated in the beginning because I come from an adversarial way of thinking and production, and that wasn't what the entertainment business was about. And now, me and Keith White, as well as Stephen Lynch and Victor Dunlop, we do everything from high-end criminal defense, where I also represent people accused of capital murder, working with one of the best attorneys in the country, Anthony Rico, as well as Mark DeMeo, representing people where the government want to kill and execute, to federal and state. I'm on the federal CJA panel. I'm still a very active state defense attorney, but also we do a lot of civil rights, 1983 claims, as well as, the economy has changed and the culture has changed. So to have an attorney who understands business and branding, we also advise and represent several nonprofits and entertainment and creative companies as well.
When you hear the term black attorney, does it bother you, or do you say?
It used to.
Okay.
It used to bother me. White supremacy has infected us just as much as a lot of things. And when I first started practicing, it bothered me a lot. Now it doesn't bother me as much anymore. I would be lying to say if it didn't still rub me the wrong way, but it doesn't offend me anymore. But when I hear that, it bothers me, because you still hear people, "Oh, that's the best black attorney in New York." Or that it just shows you we have a long way to go.
Instagram, the famous picture of you, one of your clients, Bobby Shmurda, and the correction officers, 3 black men, 3 different roles. What's your thoughts on that picture?
You know what? It's funny because I see things a little bit differently. No better than anyone. I just see things differently, and I hate it for several reasons. One, it's intellectually dishonest, and in the peanut gallery of social media, and in the factoidal world we live in, social media, where it's not about critical thought, something like that just flies, and it's not without perspective. And for me, for you to look at that statement, and I've heard people, I've had sisters, men come up to me and it's like, "Yo, I like it," and it bothers me because it doesn't take into consideration that what's the choice? Because some of these choices that a lot of these young men and women have to make, I think most reasonable people, most logical people will say that's not really a choice. Mm-hmm. But these communities and neighborhoods, we forget they were constructed by federal discriminatory, racist, federal and state policies. So now you got to talk about de facto segregation. You got to talk about Jim Crow. You got to talk about what happened when black people did stand on their own, like Little Haiti and Black Wall Street. What happened? You got to talk about COINTELPRO. You have to talk about wealth meets poverty, and the fact that the politicians, the corporations, law enforcement, all work together in this symbiotic relationship to steer business away and out of our neighborhoods. We got to talk about how mass incarceration, which is private incarceration and is for profit,
Prison industrial complex.
prison industrial complex,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got to talk about the education that is in these areas, and then you want to just go, hey, well, choices, that's just, I think that's silly, and I like I said, I think it's just intellectually dishonest.
When you said the word education, it makes me want to ask you, why is it so cool, do you think, for our youth to just be uneducated and stupid? Like, it's not cool to be smart. Like, you're an educated brother.
I think I think some of that has a historical significance. I think there was a period where you had to dumb yourself down to survive, to stop master from raping and emasculating you.
And you didn't know how to, you wasn't allowed to know how to read.
Wasn't allowed to know how to read or be brilliant or smart. So I think some of it is in a historical reference.
You think that's psychosomatic?
Yeah, and I think some of it also is the court gesture is a capitalistic concept to me. It started way back in Europe, being of folly, being silly. I think it's left an impression on us, and unfortunately, no one wants to say it. But our culture has been inundated. There's billions of dollars spent to distract us, whether it's a Jay-Z, whether it's a 50 Cent, whether it's
Bruce Jenner,
sports star, Bruce Jenner, you name it. But particularly black men, we have been targeted. There's been a war waged against us, and no one really wants to talk about that war that's been waged against us. It's been waged, and what we're dealing with now is we're seeing the fruits of our oppressor winning, and we're all like, "Oh, what happened? How did this happen?" And I think the perspective that exists for us is funny. Last week I went and spoke at a junior high school. 8th graders about to embark on high school, a hop and skip away from college. Even I would say a hop away from college, hop away from voting. It was some brilliant young kids in there, but the peanut gallery was controlling the operation. The peanut gallery was determining what's cool and what's not. And too often we don't tell the truth in our communities because we're too beaten down and we just want to appease one another. But there needs to be some truth to power.
Let me cut you on something and ask you. When you tell the truth, you have to be fearful of being called a hater.
In this day and age. Absolutely.
How do you overcome that?
I think you gotta stand up straight at all times, and I think you can't worry about what others may say or think, because unfortunately, we don't live in a time where critical thinking prevails. We have our young men and women living their lives through a mantra of all kinds of stuff and not really thinking about their decision-making process. And unfortunately, you know what? Everybody's not gonna like you.
$1 million question everybody want to know that maybe you can answer. Hot Niggas playing everywhere. It was just performed at Summer Jam by French Montana. Mm-hmm. It's on the air.
Now the Millie Rock is another song.
Why is Bobby Shmurda still in jail?
Several reasons. It's my opinion that Akil Pollard, aka Bobby Shmurda, was made an example of. He represents a certain energy that is everywhere in this America space, or I think even 4 corners of the earth, where you have black men who have very little resources and opportunity, and they're taking advantage of what is available to them. I think he was made an example. Whenever you have a prosecutor send out pressers before they make an arrest and a perp walk, then there's something else going on. And I think what happened is this young man has been made, him and his co-defendants have been made an example, and the industry, which has always been about exploitation, the people who green-lighted Hot Nigga, L.A. Reid was a part of it, but it was mostly white guys, probably 50 to 60-year-old white guys, a couple of 40-year-olds and a few 30-year-olds who sat in a boardroom and said, you know what, this is the song.
I like hot nigga.
I like hot nigga. Look at that. Look at these guys. I feel this.
Speaking of that, I don't want to cut you.
And they didn't want to come in and make a bail for this young man. They wanted to capitalize over the energy that he had, but they wanted no parts of
so we can say
giving him
Epic
out.
Records refuses to bail him out.
Sony Records, Sony
Sony.
the parent company, absolutely. I think that's a fair statement.
When he was performing for that room, he got a lot of criticism. They were saying it's
Very uncomfortable to watch for me as a fellow black man. I didn't represent him at the time that I saw that, but I know that video that you're talking about.
When you saw that, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
That they trying to exploit this young man. Like, you know, like this is Cadillac Records. Or something even worse. And what's funny is getting to know him. You know, I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm 42 years old. I went to school most of my life in Brownsville, and then Martin Luther King High School before college. He's what I would call a good kid from where I come from. Very charismatic, smart, but you know, he sees life in a different way than others. Not very different from Allen Iverson, who I knew when I went to college in Hampton University. But you know, it was he understands that now. He understands what's at play, and I thought that was horrible to sit in front of a conference room and have these white people who many of them know nothing about you or your lifestyle or your culture or your community and your neighborhood that you grew up in, and to have them sit and watch this song with the black exec at the head of the table. You know, it's quite American.
The next question, I hear free GS9, free Bobby Shmurda, people saying it on records, they saying it as a hashtag, it's everything. Has any of these so-called bros and crows and the people that saying free GS9 reached out to you to say, what can I do to help?
You know, it's funny, he definitely, and his co-defendants, they have a community of people, a lot of them coming out of the 90s area, who are at every court date strong.
Wow.
The courtroom is always crowded for all of these young men. But the names and all that stuff, no. No one's reached out.
No rapper has reached out to you?
No.
Wow.
None. I don't think, to be honest, these rappers don't have no money. So what are they really gonna do? You know, let's be honest in that regard.
And I think that needs to be reiterated to the children that's looking at this that think these rappers are millionaires.
No, these rappers aren't millionaires. They're personalities and brands, and that's all they are.
And they got logo deals.
They have logo deals. They have endorsement deals. They take out loans. They don't own their masters. They don't own their tour buses.
All in tax trouble.
They don't. They're in a lot of tax issues, but they're living the lifestyle. And if you could just go on social media and Instagram, you don't even have to be a rapper anymore to live that lifestyle. You have the cool factor and the cool kids and the swipers and the scammers and, you know, the guys pumping the purple and the weed, and it's just a mess and nobody's being honest.
So do you think it's fair that people are actually performing his records around town and his song is getting played still?
I don't think it's fair because
Okay.
obviously his work product is creating revenue that somehow he can't access. You know, because I don't know for sure. I'm not his entertainment attorney, but I would take a good guess that he's probably in the black concerning his selling of his songs.
Because he can't even promote some of it. It's just
But it was so viral that you know, I think it made what it was supposed to make. But you know, we live in this very, very weird world and unfair world, and that's the conversation and the dialogue and the discourse for me that's missing. You know, it hurts my heart that most of our kids have not embraced intelligence. Like, white supremacy is purposive. You're not going to get out of it by going along. You're not going to get out of it by not thinking. Intellect and knowledge is the only thing that is our friend. That should be our religion, critical thinking. But we're in this space where everybody want to be a joker. Everybody want to crack jokes and be cool.
It's been a lot of reports out there, just reports that he's been in gang brawls in jail. One of them said he got killed in jail and stuff like that. Could you shed some insight on anything that's going on?
And listen, everybody needs to understand something. I don't think most people who have not been there can even fathom what being incarcerated feels and looks like. And the one thing I'll bring up is there's a young man, Khalif Browder, who just died.
Rest in peace. Yep.
Rest in peace. But before he died, there was footage put out of what this young man was going in dealing with.
By the guards and the inmates.
And by the inmates.
And the guards watch the inmates do it.
Listen, and I don't think people understand the level of violence, the level of ignorance that exists in the penal system.
And the toll that it takes on you mentally.
The toll that it takes on you mentally.
After the fact, because he's been out of jail.
Yes. Physically, intellectually, spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I say to people also is, you got to survive in jail.
Yeah.
And I'm not in there doing that time with him, but I will say that he is a survivor.
Okay.
And he understands where he's at. And it's unfortunate, but he is a fighter. And I don't mean a physical fighter.
Yeah.
I'm talking about he has a fighting spirit, and he's doing his best that he possibly can to survive.
Do they naturally put him in protective custody?
I think, yeah, from a liability standpoint.
Okay.
Department of Corrections, they wouldn't want to be
Get a lawsuit
susceptible from a lawsuit. So anyone, Lil Wayne, anyone.
Explain that to them, because I think they think, oh, he pussy, he was in PC.
Ignorant shit.
He supposed to be. He dropped his flag when he was in the
ignorant shit. Listen, he has no choice. He is involuntary PC and is voluntary PC. Involuntary PC is when you're someone of his stature and you get in there and they don't want to possibly get a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So they put you in segregation. Voluntary PC is when somebody come in, and I done seen all this talking. I done seen the shooters, the killers, the gangsters tell. I used to be a prosecutor. I'm a defense attorney, federal and state level. People are talking, you know, and we live in an environment where, depending on your gangster, people could know you tell, and depending on your credibility, they'll still do business with you if they think you tough.
Yep.
So, you know, and you have people who volunteer to go into PC because of a danger. You know, I think it's pretty well known that Rikers Island, for the most part, is a blood and island, but there's a substantial amount of Crips, Latin Kings, Nietas, La Familia, you name it. And corrections does a somewhat decent job of trying to understand where everyone is to create some sort of order, because they realize the guards are outnumbered. So, you know, I have no new case where he's been charged with anything. If you do have some issues in jail, everyone who's been there know that Department of Corrections, they handle it in their own way, and he's still surviving.
So, another $1 million question. I know we can't get into the particulars of the case, but what are they actually charging him with? There's
an overarching conspiracy that's trying to tie everyone together, and then there are some overt acts that, you know, people have to understand. In a conspiracy charge, some of your overt acts can be illegal or innocuous. It just has to fit into the government's position of conspiracy. And how I explain conspiracy to people, because you have a lot of people who think they know. Imagine you have a wheel on a bike, and there's a spoke, and each spoke connects to that wheel. Those spokes don't have to touch each other or even speak to each other, as long as there's a central agreement and understanding of the conspiracy that the government claims to have put together. It's much easier on the federal level because the evidentiary laws are much more lenient in the direction of the prosecutor on the federal level as opposed to the state level. And the state level is different, but that's the overarching scheme. And then you have a couple of gun possession charges as well.
So is it a case of guilty by association? I
think that's always a the risk you run when you charge. That's why they charge conspiracy, you know, for that particular reason. But at the end of the day, they're gonna have to prove this case.
Okay.
Period.
And when the next time y'all go to court?
June 25th.
Soon.
It's very soon. Very soon.
And are they ready for trial, or what are they?
I think there's too many preliminary things that have to be done from an evidentiary standpoint before it's on for trial. But I have, based on my experience and what I do, I don't think we'll be going to trial June 25th.
And you just represent
only Mr.
Bobby.
Akil Pollard, aka Bobby Shmurda.
So, just educate me on something. Do you converse with the other attorneys for the other?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You have to, because unfortunately, we all have to file motions. They charge conspiracy, so they're going to try to lump us all together. But there's certain issues and motions that have been filed that require you to speak to at least some of the attorneys. I'm the kind of person I don't, for 1 minute, misunderstand what my job is. It's a client-centered approach. My job is to best defend him, and that's what these other attorneys' job is
for their client.
So I go at it in a client-centered approach. It's not a group thing, but you know what? If you've done this for some time, if you don't have to step on your co-counsel's toes, you shouldn't, because it's just not a good thing. I've tried cases with David Breitbart where we've had 2 juries in Russian Mafia. If people don't know, David Breitbart was Nicky Barnes' attorney and Guy Fisher's attorney and Nick Messino's attorney. And, you have to be cognizant of what your co-counsel is doing, because a jury, it affects all parties.
All right. So, if somebody gets in trouble right now and they need you, how could they contact you?
Oh man, you can go to 198 Rogers Avenue between Union and President and find me right. My law practice, that big, nice Jamel Shabazz photograph in the front that everyone always asks me about, who Jamel Shabazz donated to me and my comrades. Or you can call the office, 718-403-9261. Or if you just want to check me out and think I just started doing stuff representing Mr. Pollard, you can go on kjmontgomerylaw.com and see some of the things legally that I've done as well.
So for some of the kids might be looking at this like, yo, Bobby need to get one of them Jew lawyers, man. He need to fire that dude.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, and that's ignorance.
Because that's going to be coming from our people.
It's ignorance. I've seen that before, and what I say, and I'm very humble. This is a profession, so you get better the more you do things. But there's very few people who have gotten the results that I've gotten. And I'm not talking about Mr. Pollard's case. I'm talking about the amount of cases that I've tried as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, and I practice federal and state, and I'm a professor of law. There's very few people who are going to give you that perspective and actually give you the results. The best thing I tell people, you want to see what I'm about? Go to my site and go to the Not Guilty archive and go through each case. And it's probably about 10 to 12 cases missing that should be on there. Go look at that before you make a determination of my skill set. But even more importantly, and this is what I got to tell people, because we live we're cool with not knowing sometimes. I know public defenders who are brilliant lawyers. I know private attorneys who hit people up for $50,000 to $70,000, $100,000 retainers who probably should be disbarred. I know private attorneys who are damn good. It's not about it's an individual specific journey to figure out how good an attorney is, and that's a misnomer that we have out there. Listen, as far as black attorneys, Anthony Rico is probably one of the finest attorneys in the country. Then you have Ed Wolford, who's passed, rest in peace. Then you have Gary Villanueva. Then you have Renee Hill. Then you have Pat and Greg Watts, brothers. Then you have Xavier Donaldson, Jay Ballard, Anthony Chilius. Then you have Doc Jasper. The list goes on Doug Rankin is out there. The amount of black attorneys that
I think about the great Johnny Cochran.
He got OJ off. It's so many. Willie Gary out in Florida, I believe. But there's so many brilliant black attorneys, but we also realize we in white supremacy.
So real quick, can you give them some of your high profile cases that you?
I currently right now, it was a time. I'll tell you, there was a Russian mafia case, Vitaly Ivanitsky, Marat Kravoy, that went to trial with me and David Breitbart some years ago. I've had tons of cases that the press have covered. At some point in his career, Rock from Helter Skelter was charged with attempted murder, paralyzing somebody, facing 25 years in jail. I tried that case. He was acquitted. I've represented young Miss Abankwa, a young lady who John Ashcroft, at the last day of statute of limitations was to run, he charged her with passport fraud. She had been, brought into the fold by the women's rights groups like Gloria Steinem and Hillary Clinton to be a poster child for their issues, and we tried that before Judge Sifton, who's actually, rest in peace, died in federal court. One of the brothers in one of the police officers in a mafia cop case, Louis Eppolito, was represented by a good friend of mine, Bruce Cutler. Another great friend of mine is like an uncle to me, Ed Hayes, represented Caracappa. I represented Eppolito's brother-in-law, who never was charged, but the government was snooping to get him involved. There's a young lady who was accused, Sanford Rubenstein, of a sexual assault. Great, brilliant lady. We represent her now and bring suit against Sanford Rubenstein. There was a young man, Kamani Gray, in the last couple of years, who was shot in Flatbush and killed by the police. Myself and Mike Houston and Rich Cardinale, we represent his family as well, Victor Dunlop. There's been a lot of cases, but I tell people all the time, all my clients think their case is the biggest case in the world.
Yeah.
And I put the same effort from A to Z, no matter who it is, and I put the same effort whether you can pay your bill or you can't pay your bill, because my reputation and the ethics of what we do is much bigger than anything else.
Well, I'm glad that you're part of our Brooklyn community, because I'm very Brooklyn biased.
Me too.
I love Brooklyn.
Me too.
And anything you want to say, message that you want to give the people before you go?
The ideas should be bigger than the people. And unfortunately, we just hit on it a bunch of different times. Our young people are not peeping the plan that's been constructed for them. Hell, some of our older people are not peeping that plan. And our community needs to come together to have mentoring and mentee programs, apprenticeship programs, tutoring programs to offset some of the nonsense that's being taught in schools. We need to understand, we need to have a 10-year forecast to understand what's at play concerning Brooklyn and the gentrification of it, which to me is like ethnic cleansing in a lot of ways. We need to understand how to take control of our schools. We need to understand how to form packs with all these young, brilliant men and women with nowhere to go. We need to form packs to really get a hold of local politics, where some of these issues that affect us on a daily basis, like police brutality, education, economics, we can have some sort of say. But we've been so disenfranchised and morally beaten down that we don't understand that it's still a fight out here. And at some point, the community has to come together. I wish these Bloods and these Crips and these gangs will, the killing of one another, y'all need to pick up a book called Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon to understand that us harming each other for capitalism is we're playing right into their hands. And we live in a day and age with social media and some of these records now where we don't even need a COINTELPRO. We COINTELPRO ourselves through the music and through a lot of the imagery and the mantras that we live by. And unless we embrace critical thinking and discourse and then execution and then reflection and then accountability and responsibility, we're always going to be in this position that we're in. And I'm willing to do whatever I can to join in that group of people who are trying to bring some problem solving to the equation. We haven't learned through history. History, you can learn how to problem solve, and we're ignoring history. And hopefully these younger generations that are coming up, they'll really see that we have to embrace intelligence and embrace our history I just want to say thank you to Doggie Diamonds TV. Critical thinking, sincere discourse, and something the youth need to hear on the regular.